Hello, I'd like to welcome you to this presentation of APA Basics, Formatting and Style Guide. I'm Elizabeth Shelley, Adjunct Professor of Theological Research and Writing, and the Writing Consultant for GRTS. For those of you who have never used APA or who have not received instruction in how to use APA, using this style can be a daunting task. This presentation is designed to guide you through the basics of creating an APA style essay and help you get familiar and more comfortable using this style. The American Psychological Association, or APA, is the most commonly used formatting and documentation style for manuscripts and essays in the social sciences. The publication manual of the American Psychological Association, 6th edition, which is the blue one seen here, contains detailed guidelines to formatting a paper in APA style. APA style is most commonly used for formatting papers in psychology, business, economics, sociology, nursing, etc. In other words, the social sciences. APA format provides writers with a format for cross-referencing their sources, from their parenthetical references or in-text citations to their reference page. This cross-referencing system allows readers to locate the publication information of all source material. This is of great value for researchers who may want to locate your sources for their own research projects. The proper use of APA style also shows the credibility of writers. Such writers show accountability to their source material. Most importantly, use of APA style can protect writers from accusations of plagiarism, which is the purposeful or accidental use of source material by other writers without giving appropriate credit. APA format is not limited by the rules of citing the sources, like in-text citations and entries in the list of references. It also regulates the stylistics for actually writing about your research. Let's begin with point of view in an APA paper. Whenever possible, use the third-person point of view rather than using the first-person point of view. For example, third person would say, the study showed that. We would want to use that rather than I found out that. First person is most commonly used to avoid ambiguity, to avoid confusion. If a student is talking about a study performed by Smith and then writes something like, the author disagrees with important findings from recent years, the reader is going to wonder, who is the author? Are we talking about Smith, who the writer just referenced, or are we talking about the student? If it's the student, he or she may write, I disagree with, the findings of Smith, or I disagree with findings of research of recent years, in order to avoid this ambiguity of the reader wondering who is being referenced. So if you're wondering what's first person, we'll here briefly review some pronouns. We have singular pronouns. Those are for when we're talking about one, and we have plural pronouns for when we're talking about more than one. First person involves I. First person singular is I and me. The plural of I is we or us. Second person is you for both singular and plural, unless you're down south, and then you get y'all and all y'all, but we won't worry about that here. Third person singular is he, she, and it. Third person plural is they or them, as we can see from this chart. In APA, we have to look at pronouns a little bit differently. In APA, we prefer third-person pronouns, but first person is now growing in acceptance, primarily for the sake of clarity or to avoid ambiguity, as stated before. However, use of the first person in formal academic and especially APA papers is still discouraged. As you can see, I've crossed off second person here, you, because we never use you in academic writing. It's best to simply remove it from your academic writing vocabulary. So we can see the preferred pronouns are third person, so he, she, it, they, and them, those are going to be preferred, unless you think there could be an ambiguity issue, and then you can use first person. So we just talked about point of view in papers. Now we can talk about voice in APA, such as active versus passive voice. As often as possible, we want to use the active voice rather than the passive voice. Active voice is preferred because it's usually more straightforward and direct. It's a stronger way of writing a sentence, and it's clearer. Here's just a basic example of the passive voice. The computer was used by Mary. In active voice, we can say this more simply and more straightforwardly by saying, Mary used the computer. Now we can look at the general formatting requirements for an APA paper. You will always submit a typed, double-spaced paper with 2 spaces after punctuation between sentences. So after a period, you'll hit the space bar twice. You'll use standard-sized 8.5 by 11-inch paper. You will have 1-inch margins on all sides. No matter what your software program defaults the margins to, like some versions of Word will default the margins to 1.25 inches, you'll want to change those to 1-inch margins on all sides. You'll use 12-point Times New Roman font. Again, depending on which version of Word you're using, this might default to 11-point Calibri, and you'll want to change that to 12-point Times New Roman. You'll also indent the first line of each new paragraph a 1/2 inch or 1 tab. Don't use extra spaces between paragraphs. The entire paper will be double spaced throughout. We don't need extra spaces between paragraphs to indicate that it's a new paragraph. You'll just indent the first line of each new paragraph that 1/2 inch. Your essay should include 4 major sections. We start with the title page, followed by the abstract, followed by the main body, which is the bulk of the paper, and then references page at the end. Though these are the typical 4 major elements, ask your professor if an abstract is necessary. There will be times that it might not be necessary. A header goes on every page of your essay. It includes a shortened title of your essay on the left side and the page number on the right. To create a page header, the easiest way is to use the Insert Page Number feature in Microsoft Word. You might think that you should just go to the Insert Header button, but it might mess up the page numbers and such. So if you just go to Insert Page Number, you want to choose to have that page number on the upper right-hand side. The page number is now in the upper right of the paper. You can then click your mouse over to the left-hand side of the header box and type your shortened title in there. Here we see the essential elements of an APA title page, which consists of 4 major sections. A page header, which includes the shortened title of your paper in all caps, preceded by the words running head. You'll want to use the different first page option in Microsoft Word in order to have the words running head on just the title page. Otherwise, the words running head will be on every single page. The page number is on the right side. Your title page is page number 1. The next section is double spaced and centered near the very middle of the page. On the top line, you put the full title of your essay, and that can be long, and that is okay. Your name goes on the second line, and your affiliation, meaning your school, is on the next line. Your professor might also require his or her name, the course title, the date, whatever, in addition to that affiliation. So make sure you know what your professor requires in that section on the title page. But this, what I have pictured here, is the typical APA title page. On the abstract page, remember that in that heading, you do not use the words running head. It's only on the title page, but you still have that page number. So you have your shortened title in all caps, and the abstract is page number 2. You write the word abstract centered at the top of the page, and then you write a brief summary of your paper. This is going to be 150 to 250 words, and you're going to want to be as accurate, concise, and specific as possible. The purpose of the abstract is simply to summarize the paper's key issues, and you want to do this as accurately and succinctly as possible. We're now looking at the main body of the essay. This is the heart of the text. The first text page is page number 3 if you've included an abstract, which is page number 2. If there's no abstract, this first page of text will be page number 2. You'll type the full title of the paper centered at the top of the page. Your text is double spaced with all sections following each other without a break. No extra spaces will be between paragraphs. And you'll identify all of your sources with parenthetical in-text citations. And we can see some of these throughout this sample paper that is displayed on the screen right now. The references page. This is the last section of the essay. And on the references page, once again, we still have that running head at the top and the page number on the right-hand side. You're going to center the title of this page, which is references, at the top of the page. You're going to double space your reference entries just like you are double spacing the rest of the text. For reference entries, the first line of each reference is flush left on that left-hand margin, and each line after the first line is indented 1/2 inch. This is called a hanging indent. You're going to arrange your entries alphabetically by author's last name, or if you have an article and there's no author listed, you're going to use the article title in your alphabetical order. Here are some basic rules related to creating a references page. First, we want to invert the author's names, last name followed by initials. So if we have Jonathan Kevin Jones, we would write his name as Jones, comma, JK. Just as stated before, we're going to alphabetize our reference list entries by last name of the author of each work or by the article title if no author is listed. And some general capitalization rules for your references page are noted here. The first is that the first letter of the first word of a title and subtitle are capitalized. We also capitalize the first word after a colon or a dash in a title. And in a title, again, we will capitalize proper nouns. So things that you would normally capitalize anyway. So things like China or people's names, you will still capitalize. APA utilizes headings when an author transitions to new sections. You do not need a new heading between every paragraph. Sections should be several paragraphs in length, if not several pages. There are 5 levels of headings in APA, which we'll discuss a bit more as we continue. For short essays, say 6 to 8 pages or less, level 1 or first level headings will be sufficient. The heading is centered and in bold, as we can see from the chart above. For papers around 10 pages, you can probably use some second level headings, which are in bold and flush against the left-hand margin. You aren't likely to use many third level headings for any paper very much under 20 pages, and fourth and fifth level headings are typically reserved for lengthy projects like theses or dissertations. Now, of course, if your professor requires specific headings at specific levels, for example, if you're given an outline that you need to follow, always follow your professor's instructions. This is just for standard APA levels of headings here that I'm presenting. So, what do these levels of headings actually look like in a paper? How does this actually work? As we see here, this is a basic outline for a paper. The level 1 headings are centered and in bold, and we can see that they're labeled methods and results. The other levels of headings are labeled and placed in their appropriate places. So we have our second level headings, which are bold, but they are on that left-hand margin. So site of study, participant population, spatial ability, kinesthetic ability, those are level 2 headings, and those are flush left and in bold. The level 3 headings you can see as well as the level 4 headings, which you may or may not need. So here are levels of headings that correspond with the structure of an outline. You remember those outlines that you were forced to do in middle school and high school with your Roman numerals and your A's and B's and C's? That's exactly how levels of headings work. Your Roman numerals are your first level headings. These are your main sections of your paper. Second level headings are your subsections within your first level headings. For example, above, our Roman numeral 1 has 2 subheadings, A and B. In our second main section, or Roman numeral 2, we can see that subsection A has 2 subsections, Arabic numbers 1 and 2. Subsection B has its own subsections, but subsection 1 has subsections lowercase a and b. Outlining your essay in a similar fashion can really help you figure out where your headings should logically go. If you think you might have trouble figuring out where headings go. Remember, levels of headings, just as with outlines, every 1 needs a 2, every A needs a B. So you can't just have a single centered heading. You always will have at least 2 of those. Every subheading needs a corresponding subheading, not just one. Tables, figures, and graphs and charts are a common feature in APA essays. And here we see the visual guidelines to formatting tables in APA. Table format consists of 4 elements. We have the table label. In this example, it's called Table 1. The title is in italics, and both of these appear on separate lines above the table. They are flush left and they are single spaced. Next is the table itself. So in this case, we have the country with 3 countries listed under it and regular users. Now in the title, I've said that this is the percentage of population that uses the internet in 2013. So the table is showing what I have used as the title. Below the title, we have the citation of the source. Typically, we will put this in the form of a note. So I have note in italics, and I have noted where the data actually comes from. There are many rules for following APA format, and it's nearly impossible to memorize them all. Your best course of action is to get familiar with and utilize the official APA handbook, the 6th edition. It's that blue book that was on the second slide of this presentation. It takes some getting used to. You have to look through it and get used to all of the different guidelines that it has to offer, but it's worth the effort to learn what's in that book. If you have an updated composition textbook or a handbook that was published after 2010, there's often an APA section in there that you can use. The reason why it needs to be published after 2010 is that was when APA made its latest revisions. So if it was published prior to 2010, you would probably be using old APA guidelines. Purdue's OWL website has a lot of great information, as well as apastyle.org. Thank you for watching this. I hope it has been helpful.